This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
The Agile Brand.
Welcome to Season 6 of the Agile Brand, where we discuss marketing technology and customer experience trends, insights, and ideas with enterprise and technology platform leaders. We focus on the people, processes, data, and platforms that make brands successful, scalable, customer-focused, and sustainable. This is what makes an Agile brand. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom, advising Fortune 1000 brands on MarTech, marketing operations, and CX, best-selling author and speaker. The Agile Brand podcast is brought to you by TechSystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that my latest book, Priority is Action: 7 Principles for Better Strategies, Decisions, and Outcomes, is now available. In it, I give ideas and insights for leaders and teams that need to make meaningful progress on their priorities. After all, our priorities are what we do, not what we say we'd like to do. You can find Priority is Action on Amazon or learn more on my website, gregkihlstrom.com. Now let's get on to the show. We are here at PegaWorld Inspire at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, Nevada, and we've been seeing some amazing things, including how AI can transform the enterprise. And I've had the chance to be hands-on with some Gen AI tools at the Innovation Hub. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. A study unveiled today at PegaWorld, conducted by research firm Savanta, surveyed more than 500 business decision makers across enterprises worldwide on their understanding and their usage of AI, as well as the challenges and opportunities they see in successfully implementing the technology. Joining us today is Peter van der Putten, Director AI Lab at Pega, to discuss meaningful AI in the enterprise and this recently announced research on the rise of creative and analytical AI within global businesses. Peter, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, looking forward to having you back on the show, returning champion. So for those that missed the previous show that you were on, can you give a little background on yourself and your role at Pega?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm the director of the AI Lab, so as you said, so I'm responsible for AI innovation, so helping our clients kind of imagine, how they can improve their business, provide better service and experience for their end customers, or become more efficient. But also, as we say at Pega, we should not eat our own dog food, but drink our own champagne, right? So the idea then is, how can we further, improve our own product offerings or go to markets, using AI.
So we're going to talk about a few things today here and touch on the research in a few different aspects. First, I wanted to talk about just the influence of generative AI. Certainly, it's been impossible to escape. I don't think I've done a single show that hasn't talked about it in some way, whether it was the focus or intended focus or not. But the research indicates this significant influence and how enterprises have really looked at generative AI as a way to, you could say, open the conversation about AI. So can you elaborate? I know last time we talked a little bit about left brain, right brain. Can you talk a little bit about, how generative AI, this right brain generative AI, is kind of setting the stage for the left brain analytical AI solutions in enterprises?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So where, generative AI is right brain, creative AI. We also have our left brain, which is, we think at least, has to do more with making optimal decisions, like predicting, the impact of certain actions we could take, and then translating that into what we need to do. But it could also be other technologies, like not just decisioning, but process mining, or other technologies that help to make sense of real-time data or streaming data, et cetera, et cetera. Now, obviously, I think left brain AI has been in use within companies for years and years and years, but then it always was something that in a way was very popular, but in very distinct pockets in the organization, right? So similar to this quote of the future, what is it? The future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed.
Right, right.
So,
Yeah.
and that meant it wasn't really kind of democratized, right? And generative AI came to us actually through consumer-based applications, right? So where your mom was creating cookie recipes, or
Right.
you were whatever, your kids were making funny pictures using DALL-E and whatnot. So it's a much more kind of democratized form of AI. Hence, many more people within organizations, like CEOs, ask their reports like, "Hey, my kid is writing her thesis with Gen AI. Why aren't we using it in the company?" Right? So I think that kind of, I think that's a little bit the history of it all. Like left brain AI in use for ages, but in particular pockets, and the people who are kind of running it was like a very small group. And here came generative AI that basically anyone in a company had some form of exposure to. And that kind of started in the conversation. Oh, should we not use AI here, there, left, right, and center? But of course, in many cases, it wasn't maybe a generative AI use case.
Yeah, it kind of made it mainstream, even though it was already in some cases being used within the organization. But it kind of opened up that conversation.
Yeah, and sometimes it is a straight Gen AI use case, but in other cases it turns out to be more of a, I'm always trying to find a better word for, I don't want to say traditional AI, like as an AI geek that hurts if I would say that. But let's say left brain AI.
Yeah. Well, another thing in the research that I found really interesting was you could characterize it as high confidence in understanding, and yet in reality, some of the leaders, or many of the leaders surveyed, said they knew a lot about generative AI, but when they were actually able or asked to explain it, didn't have as great a grasp. So, to me, probably says a couple things. I mean, one is, we're probably at peak hype cycle probably for all of this stuff. Not necessarily a bad thing if enterprises are using it correctly, but, why do you think there is such a discrepancy?
Yeah, I think it might have something to do with what's the name of the effect again? There's a phenomenon where if people don't know a lot about a topic, they kind of overestimate their abilities.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. So that might be a little bit at play here. And I think in many cases, people kind of have a sense of what generative AI is, but then they can't really imagine what these other forms of AI are if they don't come from that AI community or background, right? So I think that leads then to confusion or labeling everything as if it's generative AI, where certainly that's not the case.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of generative AI, one of the big announcements was around Gen AI Blueprint. I got to try it hands-on in the innovation lab. Pretty cool. Made my own. I posed as a retail banking company and created a whole workflow and stuff. But could you first, maybe for those not familiar with it, could you talk a little bit about what is it and what's it intended to do?
Yeah, great question. So in many cases, Gen AI is used for, I would say, for productivity hacks, right? So nothing bad with it. Like let's say you have a call center and you're doing a lot of conversations, then it's useful to summarize that conversation and play it back to a customer. But that use of AI, whilst very useful, is not necessarily transformational. Pega Blueprint is more an example of something that could be transformational in the sense that it let us imagineer kind of new ways of, if you want to build a new app for a loan application, or deciding whether someone can get certain government benefits, or maybe something way more exotic. I think mud logging was one of the examples that was mentioned in the keynote today. Then based on very simple prompts of, what is it what you're trying to achieve, it will generate an entire working application, right? So what is particular workflow or process, or what kind of data will be useful, but also what could be the experience for people interacting with this app in different channels. So it's really in that sense an ideation tool, right? So it's trying to put ideation on steroids by providing all kinds of examples and starting points for such an application.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think this uncovers a few things that anyone who's been through a digital transformation of any kind. I mean, there's a lot of hurdles. There's a lot to do, even in successful ones, but there's a lot of hurdles to success, and one of those, from my experience, is visualizing the end result, right? So you can do that in many different ways. You can get different views of different things, but what I was impressed by was the ability to actually get multiple views of the exact same thing, as opposed to like sending out something for prototypes to this one team. And so is that, I mean, how in your mind, does that help that end transformation?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that's what it's meant for, right? So we're listening to a podcast, but we're in a typical, meeting room environment. Right. My definition of hell is when people say, let's develop a new application, let's get into a meeting room like this with a bunch of Post-its. I want you all to think from scratch and we'll develop everything from nothing. That's for me, at least personally, a horrible experience. Yeah. Whereas if you can get together with some people and you generate some examples, and actually it's kind of nice if they are all kind of the same but somewhat different, and use it as fuel to fuel the ideation process. It's such a more pleasant experience and better experience and faster experience to get to a result. And like you say, people have it's this what is it, the blank page writer syndrome. If you have a blank page, it's very hard to imagine what it's going to be. Whereas if you have a story in front of you, you can say, oh, I like this part, but I don't like that part. Let me change that, right? So, and this is exactly that. And I think that will help also involve a wider audience of people to become part of that whole ideation process, not just, let's say, hardcore developers.
I'm excited to announce an exclusive offer that will enhance your listening experience of the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom podcast. You can now listen to my show, The Agile Brand, completely ad-free on your favorite listening apps like Spotify and Apple for just $4.99 a month, giving you access to all the great conversations with top thought leaders in marketing technology, CX, and more without the ads. To learn more and sign up, follow the link in the show notes to listen to The Agile Brand completely ad-free. Check it out now.
Another hurdle that organizations often run into in transformation is, there's people, process, platform, right? So, I think we've talked some about the process and the platform. I think most people don't love change. Let's just face it. But change becomes easier when you're able.
Of the process.
Yeah. But also when you're able to be educated more quickly, and when the change process isn't so cumbersome, and when you can see the end result. And so, we talked a little bit about, from that blueprint side, but another exciting thing that I saw today was Socrates and, just that whole learning and training part. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Socrates, the idea is that if you, like even separate from Pega, like the Socratian way, is that how to put it?
Socratic.
Socratic. Yeah. There you go. The Socratic way to learn something is not to tell you everything, but to ask you questions, right? So that's a much better way of learning, because then you're constantly being, as the learner, you're kind of being challenged to think along, and of course you'll based on your level of skills, you'll get more background, less background, and this way you'll be guided through the learning process. And because it works both ways. Like if you normally put out learning content, if it's too difficult, that's frustrating. But the other side of the coin is if it's too easy, many things you already know and you have to read through it and do it. It's a waste of your time, right? So by following this kind of Socratic approach, you can make it much more personalized and targeted. Yeah. So based on generative AI, right? So we write some prompts where we say, well, this is the content actually that someone needs to learn, but then guide the student through it through questions, etc. And that will help. And then also based on how you answer those questions, we can become even more contextual about okay, you got point 1, 2, and 4. We just need to help you a little bit with point 3.
Yeah.
And yeah, at first we're going to use that more in our kind of in Pega Academy, which is basically our product training environment. But this is something that you ultimately just want to bring straight into let's say the developer experience as well, right? So as and when you're developing applications, yeah, sometimes you just want to have a straight answer to your question, but sometimes it helps also if you're being kind of guided through how to build something at the right level, and that's where Socrates kind of, Socratic approach can work really well. And in Gen AI, it's incredibly easy to create that type of learning with Gen AI based methods.
Yeah, yeah. So, speaking of learning and upskilling and all of those things, so, there's a lot of tools and processes that are getting democratized, as we've talked about, even, other things in other realms, creative and other area, marketing and those things as well, which, I talk a lot about on this show. How should enterprises be thinking about, you've got this increasing democratization, which is helping kind of push these tools to more people. I don't think software engineering is ever going to go away and data science is ever going to go away. But where should enterprises be thinking about when they're reskilling, upskilling? Like how what's the right approach to think there with AI becoming more and more prevalent?
Yeah, no. So I think one of the potential promises of AI is to make every employee behave more like the best employee, and make every agent like the best agent, make every developer like the best developer, make every marketer like the best marketer. And what I kind of like is to not frame it as replacement or anything like that. I like that question that was asked today. Don't you want to be better at your job? Like everyone wants to be better at their job, right? And AI should not be something that kind of replaces you, but something that assists you, right? So it's really interesting when I'm a part-time academic as well. If you read some of the older AI stuff from the 60s, there's a lot of focus not on AI kind of replacing the human, but it's about AI as augmented intelligence. So how can you work shoulder to shoulder with the human, and together you're better, right? So I think that point of view, it's interesting. It's coming back now more and more actually because of Gen AI. So that's partial answer to your question.
Yeah.
I think, the other angle to it, I think it is important that people become AI literate. I think there's this cliche of you won't be replaced by an AI, but you will be replaced by an employee who's using AI.
Right.
And trust me, all the people that will flow into organizations, next year after, these are people that went through college, that stumbled through college, writing their thesis with AI, right? So they have completely different AI literacy skills as the people are maybe working in companies right now. Yeah. Also different expectations in the sense of that they actually expect the companies that they start to work for, that they are, somewhat ahead of the curve. Not a company that has a total ban on using generative AI or something like that.
Yeah, and so what do you
go and work somewhere else then? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, what would you say to those companies that just have the total ban? I mean, what are they missing?
Well, so I appreciate the initial apprehension, right? So, but then you need to work quite quickly on, but what are, what kind of boundaries do we want to set, etc., so that we can make good use of the technology. And specifically, there's a difference here between left brain and right brain, because you could get quite far in the left brain world of saying, well, we're not doing this, blah, blah, blah. Right brain AI, you cannot stop it. It's 75, 80% of the people who are working in companies today are using generative AI as a, let's say, what IT calls shadow IT tool. Yeah, what right. I call actually a useful tool. Yeah. So people are using it anyway. So you may as well control it and making sure that you put some proper governance around it, and that you really build it into very specific use cases that drive most of the benefits in marketing, in sales, in service, in development. Yep.
Do you think, a few years down the road, do you think that AI will be anthropomorphized, like thought of as a team member, or is it? Because it kind of feels right now like it's headed that way. But is this just a fad and it's hype, or is that going to be normalized? What do you think? Where do you think we're headed with that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I immediately have two conflicting answers in my head, right? So I think in a way both will happen, that answer. But we are wired to anthropomorphize, right? As humans, we always, if something smells like something intelligent, whether it's a Tesla or a teddy bear, we project creativity, emotions, meaning, whatever, on top of that intelligent thing. That's just how we are hardwired through evolution, because 50,000 years ago, if something yellow, black striped jumped out of a tree and said "raw," you weren't like, "Oh, are you an object or a subject?" You would run. Yeah. So hungry animal, I need to run. So in a way, we are hardwired to do that anthropomorphization. But on the flip side, I do think that AI will be demystified a lot more. And you already see tendency right now. People get a little bit sick of just AI hype and humbug, and people go like, yeah, but how can I use it for real? Oh, it's summarizing my customer service interaction. Brilliant, or it's simulating an angry customer so that I can train my customer service agents. Brilliant. It's helping me to ask questions with Knowledge Buddy on how to resolve a particular issue. And so it becomes way more practical, and then we might anthropomorphize it actually less, because we see it more as a useful tool, maybe a companion, but not a robotic overlord.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the survey responses, was there is some fear of
around 40% of the people think there's risk that they will be enslaved. But,
right. It's hopefully we got at least a few more years.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, they can steal my job, and I'll just be on the beach, drinking a cocktail. Why not?
Right. Well, Peter, thanks so much for joining. As we wrap up here, what's been a highlight for you so far this year at PegaWorld?
Well, at risk of sounding cliche, for me, it's always great to meet all the clients, people, new clients that I haven't met before, but also people I've been working for years and years. Obviously, as the AI guy, I cannot complain about the amount of attention for AI, like Blueprint, Knowledge Buddy, Socrates, but also other things like Gen AI Coach. It's AI left, right, front, and center. But what I also appreciate, it's very much not in promises, but more like, hey, look at this real thing, And we are going to sort out to what extent it's really useful, but at least it's real capability, it's real product. It's not some. We're an East Coast company, right? So it's not just some West Coast talk, it's real stuff.
Yeah, love it. Well, again, I'd like to thank Peter van der Putten, Director AI Lab at Pega, for joining us today and sharing his valuable insights. For those interested in delving deeper into the research discussed and learning more about Pega, follow the links in the show notes.
Thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.gregkillstrom.com. That's GregKihlstrom.com. While you're there, check out my series of best-selling Agile Brand guides covering a wide variety of marketing technology topics, or you can search for Greg Kihlstrom on Amazon. The Agile Brand is produced by Missing Link, a Latina-owned, strategy-driven, creatively fueled production co-op. From ideation to creation, they craft human connections through intelligent, engaging, and informative content. Until next time, stay agile.
The Agile Brand.
If you're tired of hearing the same old judgmental, shaming financial advice about buying too many lattes from old white men who conveniently ignore issues like systemic oppression, it's time to join the Financial Feminist podcast. Hosted by Tori Dunlap, a globally recognized money educator, Financial Feminist is the #1 money podcast for women. It goes beyond just talking about money, it explores how money uniquely affects women. Featuring fascinating guests like Ramit Sethi, Amy Porterfield, Maya Vander, Hannah Berner, Justin Baldoni, Eve Rodsky, and experts across finance and feminism, the podcast dives into topics such as the investing gap, sex work, diet culture, MLMs, the prison industrial complex, the psychology of money, and much more. Additionally, listeners can benefit from how-to episodes like how to start investing or how to finally become debt-free. Join in smashing the patriarchy and getting rich one episode at a time. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by the Yap Media Podcast Network. I'm Hala Taha, CEO of the award-winning digital media empire, Yap Media, and host of Yap Young and Profiting Podcast, a #1 entrepreneurship and self-improvement podcast where you can listen, learn, and profit. On Young and Profiting Podcast, I interview the brightest minds in the world, and I turn their wisdom into actionable advice that you can use in your daily life. Each week, we dive into a new topic like the art of side hustles, how to level up your influence and persuasion, and goal setting. I interview A-list guests on Young and Profiting. I've got the best guests, like the world's #1 negotiation expert, Chris Voss, Shark Damon John, serial entrepreneurs Alex and Layla Hermosi, and even movie stars like Matthew McConaughey. There's absolutely no fluff on my podcast, and that's on purpose. Every episode is jam-packed with advice that's going to push your life forward. I do my research, I get straight to the point, and I take things really seriously, which is why I'm known as the podcast princess and how I became one of the top podcasters in the world in less than 5 years. Young and Profiting Podcast is for all ages. Don't let the name fool you. It's an advanced show. As long as you want to learn and level up, you will be forever young. So join podcast royalty and subscribe to Young and Profiting Podcast, or YAP, like it's often called by my YAP fam, on Apple, Spotify, CastBox, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.